we are here. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Lopes Goes Last podcast. I, of course, am your host, Tyler Lopes. If you have not subscribed yet, please feel free to do so. There's a lot of you that have not subscribed yet. About 85% of those who have watched my podcast are not subscribed, which I find kind of strange considering this is a pretty hard podcast to find, especially if you're not subscribed. So please, if you have not subscribed, it takes 2 seconds. It's completely free. Please do so. Also hit that bell icon so that you never miss any one of my videos or clips. And also, please do follow me on Facebook and Twitter at Lopes Goes Last Podcast on Facebook and at Lopes Goes Last on Twitter. Also, please like and share the video as well. Oh, man. What a week it has been. It's been kind of a crazy week in the world of sports here, but I am recording this a day later, so I am recording this on Tuesday, March 1st, and the reason that I'm recording this a little bit later than I usually do is because I wanted to wait and see how the MLB Lockout turned out before I gave you guys any kind of update. Obviously, by the time you guys would see this on Friday, if I told you something on Monday and then a decision was made on Tuesday, whether there was a deal or not, it would certainly be completely out of date. There'd be no point in watching it. So I wanted to give you guys as up-to-date information as I possibly could. So I had to wait until today to record this part of the podcast. This week is going to be a little bit different, obviously, with the lockout kind of coming to a head here today, actually. And not really a whole lot else going on in terms of the world of sports. Obviously, you know, there's NBA stuff going on, you know, there's specific games, but nothing's really changed. There hasn't been a team that's really like struggling or anything like that. The Lakers aren't doing all that great, if that's something you care about, but you know, there hasn't really been much, you know, in terms of kind of crazy movement to talk about. There wasn't any kind of major breaking story or anything like that in the NBA. The Celtics are the same team that they were a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So, you know, not really much has changed. So this week, I decided to do things a little bit different. I'm doing my first NFL mock draft, and you'll see that a little bit later in this video. So the other thing that I am going to do that's very, very important, obviously, as I stated earlier, is that I'm going to give you guys an update on where we stand with the lockout between the owners and the players in the MLB. And unfortunately, news broke today that the MLBPA unanimously rejected the MLB's final offer today. So unfortunately, it has been confirmed by Rob Manfred in a press conference that the first 2 series of games has been canceled. The season was originally slated to open up on March 31st. It will now open up no earlier than April 8th. So you're talking about an 8-day swing there. That's obviously over a week. So unfortunately, if you did buy tickets to any of the games for opening weekend or the opening week, whatever the case may be, you're not going to be able to go to those games now. They're going to be canceled. And from what I understand, the MLB will simply just pick up the schedule where they left off, you know. So in terms of like division games or whatever that the case may be, if you're opening up the season against a team that, you know, you were playing for, you know, in the division that you're in, then those games will not be made up. They will not count against you or anything like that. So, you know, a team might play an odd number of games against one another this year, a different number of games against one another this year. That's just the way it is. Obviously, it'd be a little too difficult to do it any other way than to kind of switch the schedule all around, because people have already bought season tickets. People have already bought tickets to individual games months in advance. So it's really difficult to do anything other than that. But the most important thing is, yes, again, the MLBPA did reject the quote-unquote final offer from the MLB owners to kind of start the season on time, and unfortunately, again, they rejected it unanimously. So that means, again, the season will be pushed back by at least 8 days, if not more. And I say if not more because as of right now, so obviously things may change, announcements may be made before this, and if that's the case, then I will either put it in the description or I will kind of add on to this video as the week goes along, whatever the case may be. As of today, as of 7 o'clock-ish Eastern Standard Time on the 1st of March, there is no date that the MLB and the MLBPA are going to revisit negotiations. So, we don't know when the next meeting will be. I'm guessing it's going to be within the next few days. I highly doubt that they're going to go another week or 2 weeks without negotiating anything, because that would just be very irresponsible. But I guess you never really know at this point. I've been very outspoken since this podcast began on where my feelings lie in terms of who I think is to blame. Rob Manfred has gotten a lot of blame, and I think rightfully so. However, he is just kind of a puppet for the owners. He just kind of has to work for them and do what they want. But also, I think the players in some instances, especially with these latest rounds of negotiations, have probably been a little bit unreasonable as well. I think that there are a lot of aspects of the latest proposal that I'll go into here in a little bit that I think are good. But obviously there are things that I think need to be better in terms of the owners. I am a little worried, to be honest, right now. I don't know what's going to happen with the season, but quite frankly, I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's been delayed 8 days already. I wouldn't be surprised if baseball doesn't start up until May again, like it did in the shortened season. It's really sad for baseball fans to have to wait longer. But I said in previous episodes of the podcast, and I stand by it, the players have stood their ground, and they're not giving up. They are doing their very best to get what they want and get what baseball fans and get what players feel that they deserve. And I'm happy that they're not settling. I'm happy that they are continuing the fight, even if it does mean missing games. What concerns me more than anything is the long-term financial ramification of fans looking at this and saying, all right, that's it. Because with big markets like MLB, you bring in some casual fans all the time. You bring in guys that might not necessarily know a lot of the players' names or how consistently guys are performing or underperforming or whatever the case may be. They're not the guys that are a Red Sox fan like me, but they're keeping up with the Nationals because you want to see how Juan Soto's doing. Or, you might like the Red Sox, but, you still appreciate how good somebody like Vlad Guerrero Jr. for the Blue Jays is, even though he's in your division, whereas other fans might, just hate the Blue Jays and hate the Yankees and hate the Rays and hate everybody if they're in your division, no matter what, and never watch any of those games, whereas I would watch other games just because I love to see good baseball. I love to see good players play, There's a wide spectrum of fans, obviously, and a part of that wide spectrum of fans is the casual fan that just kind of tunes in every once in a while when maybe there's nothing else on, maybe goes to a game because they want to go out and, have a few beers with their buddies or with their girlfriends or whatever the case may be, right? So, I think those fans, I think you're going to lose a lot of them that you've really gained over the last couple of years. So I think that a lot, if not all of those fans are probably going to end up tuning off. Maybe not all, but a good amount of them are going to no longer be, fans of baseball. And I think some hardcore fans too. I know somebody who's very, very close to me that watched baseball growing up, played baseball growing up, and then the strike in '94 happened and they stopped watching, and they haven't watched since because they were so upset with, the players and with the owners and with everybody involved that that person just completely stopped watching baseball. And, I think that's really sad because baseball's brought me so much joy, but I can still understand that perspective of, when you feel like players and owners are making millions, if not billions in some cases of dollars if you're an owner, and you still just want to suck up every couple $1,000s that you can get as if you're broke. Like, I can understand that point of view completely. But nonetheless, I am worried about the financial ramifications of all of this kind of happening now and what the long-term effects of this could be. And therefore, I'm worried for the players because I feel like the owners might have a legitimate argument to lowball them on future offers because, with the decrease in revenue of not as many fans tuning in, it's very possible that the owners are going to say, we're not going to make as much money as you think we're going to be making with these proposals. So that worries me a little bit, but I do want to get into what the MLB actually offered here and where I think that they can go from here, where I think the owners are actually in the right and where I think they're in the wrong in their proposal, where I think the players had every right to decline and where I think the players should ultimately accept. Now, obviously, you can't accept parts of a CBA. You have to accept the whole thing or nothing. And obviously, there were certain parts of the CBA that the players did not like, and that's why they unanimously declined it. But I do feel like there are some parts that the players probably wouldn't have a problem with if it stayed. But, obviously they probably want it to be improved upon as well. But, if it had to stay where it was, I'm sure there's some things in here that the players would be all right with. So here is the updated kind of proposal of what the MLB proposed, according to Jesse Rogers in the Associated Press, that is now coming from ESPN here. Okay. So the MLB proposed raising the luxury tax threshold from $210 million to $220 million for each of the next 3 seasons. So that's obviously an increase of $10 million. And then in 2025, it would be $224 million. And it would be $230 million in 2026. So if you guys remember from a few podcasts ago, the original proposal for the MLB that I discussed was $214 million, $214 million, $214 million, $216, $220. So now, obviously, instead of that, it starts with $220, does that 3 times, then $224, then $230. So that's a bit of a jump there. I think that's a good jump to make. The players wanted it to start at $238 and then go up to $244 next year, $250 in 2024, $256 in 2025, and $263 in 2026. I think that's probably a bit high, especially with what I just discussed with the decrease in revenue that's probably going to come from this strike. Not only this year, but in years to come with the loss of consistent fans. I think that, if the owners even stayed there, I think that would be a good win for the players. I think the most important thing, though, that this does not discuss is, did the owners get rid of the tax stuff, because they were obviously, they wanted to raise the CBT, but they wanted to also increase the taxes and the penalties that a team would get for going over, which the players argued was worse. They would rather it stay the same and lower the penalties than increase the CBT and increase the penalties because, it's going to be the same thing. Owners just aren't going to want to spend that much money because they're going to be afraid of getting penalized. So I did read in another article, not in this one, but in another article, that they did lower the tax amount and they did lower the penalties. So that's good. We don't really know how much they lowered it, at least as of right now. I haven't seen the specific information to tell you how much they decreased it, but they did decrease the tax and they did decrease the penalty according to some other sources that I read earlier today. So that's good news. But again, I do think there is still a little bit of room for improvement. I think if you bumped up to 225 for the next 3 years and then maybe like a 228 and then a 235, I think that is something the players would probably get behind if they haven't gotten behind this already. Again, we haven't heard any kind of specific thing from the MLBPA saying this is the aspect of the CBA that we didn't like and that we rejected, or these are the aspects that we liked but we just couldn't. Whatever the case is, we haven't heard that. We have heard some things about, from the MLBPA that I'll get into here in a little bit just to kind of tell you where things are at. So that's the first thing that the MLB proposed. They also proposed, we talked about the pre-arbitration pool and how the owners were stuck at about $20 million, the last time. It might have been 15, depending on when that video came out. It's been in between 15 and 20 over the last couple of weeks. But they were generous in this one. They jumped it up to $25 million annually. So definitely, a bit of an increase, but still I don't think enough for the union to accept, especially considering the union dropped by 30 million. They were up at 115, and then they dropped in their latest proposal to 85 million, which, still I think is a bit high, but, that's at least a compromise. That's at least them dropping down, whereas the owners are just still kind of steadily climbing and not really wanting to cough anything up there. Although I did see, again, in other sources that, they may even go up to $30 million annually, and there was another proposal that I will get into. So according to other sources, there were two different offers. I'm telling you offer one, and then I'll tell you offer two here in a little bit, so it might get a little murky here. But just try your best to keep up. I had a hard time keeping up as well, so I'll try my best to make it as easy to follow as possible here. But right now, 25 million is the annual bonus pool proposal for the pre-arbitration pool that the owners offered in offer one, and obviously, like I said, the players wanted 85 million, so that's a pretty big difference there. That is probably the area where the players probably spat on it and said, "Hell no, we're not doing it." The league also decided to increase its proposal for minimum salaries from $675,000 a year to $700,000, and then that would move up by $10,000 every year for the first 3 years. So it'd start out at 700, then go to 710, then go to 720, and then a person will be eligible for arbitration. So that's a good increase, especially considering it was at 625 not too long ago. I think that is something that the players should definitely get behind. I think 700,000 is definitely good enough for the players to accept. Now, again, like I said, the CBA cannot be accepted in parts. It has to be accepted as a whole or not at all. And the reason why I talked about earlier the offer one and offer two is because the MLB in offer one offered a 12-team playoff, which is what the players were willing to give. They were willing to expand to a 12-team playoff. And all of the numbers that I just gave you with the luxury tax increase, with the minimum salary, with the pre-arbitration pool, all of those numbers hinge on the 12-game playoff. Now, here is option B for you. So option B was keeping a similar CBT luxury tax structure, so similar to the 220 million for 3 years, then 224, then 230. Although those numbers are not confirmed, but I would assume it would either be the same or slightly less, considering the rest of the proposal. The MLB proposed $40 million annually for the new bonus arbitration pool in offer B, which that's great. That's what I talked about. I think if they got up to $40 million, the players should accept. But here is the catch. The minimum salary is the same. However, a 14-team playoff, which the players really, really do not want. Now, you know what? If you have the argument where you can say, oh, the players are just being a little bit of babies here, they can't get every single thing that they want, so just do the 14-team playoff. I understand. Part of me feels that way too. But here's what I will argue. What does that do to the integrity of the game? What does that do to the integrity of divisions in baseball? Because in the proposal for the 14-team playoff, 2 teams would get first-round byes. But they wouldn't necessarily be division winners. They would just be the top 2 seeds. So, for instance, last year, let's say. So, the Dodgers and the Giants had the 2 best records in the NL, okay? They were in the same division, which meant the Dodgers, having the slightly worse record, had to play in the wild card round because they didn't win their division. But all the division winners got to move on. So, the Dodgers and the Giants in this new proposal, even though one of those 2 clearly cannot win the division if the other one wins the division, both of them would have gotten first-round byes, and all the other division winners would have had to play in the wild card rounds, which is just crazy to me. I don't think that should be the case because, listen, I have no problem with the NBA's playoff structure, but how much do divisions matter in basketball? Barely at all, honestly. I talked about this, I think, a few podcasts ago, where, the Knicks have really fallen off, so I doubt that they're going to make the play-in tournament. But there was a point earlier this year that it seemed that all 5 teams in the Atlantic Conference, or the Atlantic Division, excuse me, in the NBA, so that would be the Celtics, the Nets, the 76ers, the Raptors, the Knicks. All 5 of those teams would have probably made the playoffs. There are only 8 spots in the playoffs. Now, obviously, there's a play-in tournament, so the first 10 seeds, technically make the playoffs or the play-in tournament. So all 5 of those teams would have at least made the play-in tournament. So not all of them would have technically made the playoffs, probably. But the point is that, that's half of the spots for one division. So, divisions don't really matter in basketball. And I don't want that to happen for baseball, considering how much division rivalries have meant to the game since the beginning of the game. I mean, if Red Sox-Yankees if the Red Sox and the Yankees are the 2 best teams in baseball, which they wouldn't be, but let's just say that they are, it matters because they're in the same division, so they both can't win the division, which means they both can't move on to the ALDS. One of them is going to have to play that 1-game wild card playoff to, basically fight for their playoff life. And now, if this new proposal with the 14-team playoff goes through, they would both just make the playoffs. They're trying to alter the seeding of it to try and make it more fair. And also, there's 30 teams in the MLB. Half of them are going to make the playoffs. How much does making the playoffs even matter at that point? Obviously, a team like the Mariners last year or the Blue Jays last year deserves to make the playoffs. That's 2. So that takes it from a 10-team playoff to a 12-team playoff. Bueno. But when you add 2 more teams to that, does anybody really want to see the 78-win Kansas City Royals make the playoffs? Or does anybody want to see the 75-win Cincinnati Reds make the playoffs? I don't, because who cares? Even Cincinnati fans are like, we made the baseball playoffs with a losing record. That is much more possible when you add 2 more teams to each league making the playoffs. So, to me, I don't think it's a good idea. So, the bad thing about offer B is obviously the 14-team playoff, which I know the players do not want. But this is not all negative. I know it seems like it's all negative. Games are getting canceled. There's still no CBA. Long-term financial penalties, blah, blah, blah. I get it. There is a lot of bad, but there is still some good. Both the owners and the players did compromise a decent amount. I don't think either side is compromising enough at the moment, but I do think that it's a good thing that, both sides are at least shrinking the gap a little bit. So that's certainly something to hang on to, and I'll give you guys updates as the week goes along. But I do want to talk a little bit about, what the MLBPA said about Rob Manfred and about, all this stuff going on. So here is what Union President Tony Clark said about this whole situation here. So the players want to play. Everyone knows that, but the reason we are not playing is simple. A lockout is the ultimate economic weapon. In a $10 billion industry, the owners have made a conscious decision to use this weapon against the greatest asset that they have, the players. The group won't be intimidated. I've seen more unity over the last few years than at any time in our recent history. Rob Manfred and MLB's owners have canceled the start of the season. Players and fans around the world who love baseball are disgusted, but sadly not surprised. From the beginning of these negotiations, players' objectives have been consistent: to promote competition, provide fair compensation for young players, and to uphold the integrity of our market system. Against the backdrop of growing revenues and record profits, we are seeking nothing more than a fair agreement. What Rob Manfred characterized as a defensive lockout is, in fact, the culmination of a decades-long attempt by owners to break our player fraternity. As in the past, this effort will fail. We are united and committed to negotiating a fair deal that will improve the sport for players, fans, and everyone who loves the game. So that is a statement from the union president. Obviously, Rob Manfred made his statement earlier. Most of it was regarding how disappointed he was with the lockout negotiations and how he felt today was pretty unproductive and that he was canceling part of the season. So not really much to report on there that I haven't already said. But, it is very sad that it had to come to this. But like I said in the last, in the last podcast, I just think that this was inevitable. I think that this is what was going to happen. I am happy that the players did not cave and take a deal that does not represent the sport fairly. And I think right now, obviously the players are going to probably have to take parts of this deal that they're not going to like. They're not going to get everything they want. But I think the owners are just going to have to come to the table and be willing to cough up more money. And that's what's going to get this deal done. But as always, you guys feel free to, think what you will and do whatever you guys need to do with this. But yeah, so that is all I have to report on. Again, a very sad situation. That's all I have to report on for right now. But I will keep you guys updated as time goes along here. But right now, just stick around for a little bit, and I'm going to take you to my NFL mock draft that I recorded a little bit ago. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I will see you in a minute. All right, guys, so as promised, we're going to be doing something a little bit different this week. I'm going to be doing my first NFL mock draft for the 2022 NFL Draft. That'll be taking place April 28th through the 30th, so right on the 2-month mark by the time I'm recording this. So I wanted to get that out there for you guys so you guys can hear my thoughts on, who I think is going to get drafted where, at least at this point. Now, I will admit, I don't know everything about every single player. Not yet. I'm still kind of working on that, but I feel like I know well more than enough to be able to justify my picks and where. So I wanted to get that out for you guys. Obviously, with CBS and Daniel Jeremiah and a whole lot of other NFL insiders getting out their mock drafts over the last couple of weeks, I wanted to get one out myself so that you guys can hear my thoughts where I think teams could go, should go, whatever the case may be. You're going to probably hear things in this mock draft that you have not heard for other mock drafts. You're going to see guys go way higher, way before you think that they should be going, and probably see guys going way later than you think that they should be going. And I agree. I definitely think that this is a mock draft for right now, but there are definitely going to be some guys that will be moving around, especially as the combine happens, and obviously, further draft evaluations as they continue to go on. But for right now, I wanted to get this one out there for you guys. So obviously, I've seen a couple of YouTubers use this website here, the draftnetwork.com. So I figured this would be the easiest way to, kind of just showcase where I think people are going. And also, it really helps that you guys can see the draft order. You guys can kind of see, instead of just me explaining it with no visual or anything, or me having to make a whole bunch of graphics that take hours and hours and hours, you guys could just see it live right here. So I figured I would do something a little bit different this week for that. So I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you want to continue to see me do mock drafts like these, or mock drafts for NBA or even MLB, although that one would be really difficult, but I would do it if you guys really wanted it. Just let me know in the comment section below, or just let me know on Twitter or Facebook, anything like that. I want to get started here. So the Jaguars up with the first pick here. So they need a lot. Obviously, when you're the number one, when you have the number one pick in the draft, you don't really have that great of a team usually. The Jaguars need a lot, and you can see, this website at least does its best, right, to go very in depth. So you can see, obviously, the predictive board for where this particular website thinks guys are going to go. I'm not going to be following that. There's going to be guys, like I said, going lower, going higher, whatever the case may be. And you can also see the team needs according to this website. Now, most of these team needs are pretty valid, but I have some different team needs that, I do have some disagreements in terms of, and maybe not necessarily the Jaguars themselves, but, there are some teams where I think that they should be going in different directions than necessarily what this website is saying. So, I hope you guys enjoy it, but we're going to jump right in here. So the Jaguars, they need a lot. They really, really, really need, pass rushers. But I think the number one thing that they need right now is offensive line. You've got to protect your franchise quarterback. He took a lot of licks last year. I will say I don't like the fact that you need an offensive tackle at number 1 because there are really good ones available. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think that an offensive tackle is the best player in the draft. I will say it right now. I still, as great of a year as Aiden Hutchinson had for Michigan, I still think Kayvon Thibodeau is the best player in the draft, and I will until I'm proven wrong, obviously. So, I think that, he's going to be the best player in the draft, and when you have the number 1 pick in the draft, you always want to take that guy that's going to be a superstar. But I think that the need for the Jaguars is just too great for offensive line here. I hate that they have to make this pick at number 1, but I am going to go Evan Neal out of Alabama. He's clearly the best tackle in the draft, probably the best offensive lineman as a whole in the draft. He's absolutely gigantic. He's 6'7", 340 pounds, has ideal size for a tackle. He's big, he's strong, he's quick, he has great hands. So certainly I think he's a great player. But I do hate the fact that, he's going number 1 because I don't think he's the best player in the draft. But I think he just fits the Jaguars way too well to, let him slip by. Because obviously the Jaguars definitely need somebody to protect Trevor Lawrence's blind side more than they need pass rushers at the moment. On to Detroit. So the Lions, another team, man, they need a lot. Obviously, they need quarterback. As far as I'm concerned, Jared Goff is not going to be the answer at quarterback, especially with all the money that they're paying him. Getting him out of there as quickly as possible is probably what you're going to need. He's not a bad quarterback, but he's a bad quarterback considering how much he's being paid. They obviously need, they need pass rushers. They need secondary. You probably need some more help at the wide receiver position as well. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a great wide receiver, but you need more than just him and a Quintez Cephas or somebody like that. You're going to need more than just those guys. But what I will say is, one thing you're going to notice is, a lot of the top tier teams, or I should not top tier teams, actually the lower tier teams technically, but a lot of the teams that have the top picks really need kind of the same things. A lot of offensive line, a lot of pass rushers, secondary. You're going to really see that kind of a pattern unfold for a lot of these teams. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So you're going to kind of hear, it might be a little bit repetitive in that way in terms of what teams need, but, do bear with me because a team needs what it needs. So, I can't really help that. But for me, I think that, you got to go and get the best pass rusher that's available. Now, again, for me, I think that would be Kayvon Thibodeau. But obviously, the general consensus now after the season with the crazy year that Aiden Hutchinson had, Kayvon Thibodeau was kind of battling injury, didn't really play all that much, and didn't really play all that great when he did play. I think the general consensus right now is that Aiden Hutchinson's going to be the number 1 pass rusher off the board, So I am going to go Aiden Hutchinson here. I think that the Lions need a pass rusher, and he's a great one. Don't get me wrong. Phenomenal. Definitely him and Kayvon Thibodeau are 1A and 1B. You might disagree or, whatever on who is 1A and who is 1B in that scenario, but I think that, the smart play right now is Aiden Hutchinson. He's more of a sure thing, I would say. He's a little bit bigger, Kayvon Thibodeau. He's kind of got that Brian Burns size. He's only about 255, 260, so Aiden Hutchinson's a little bit bigger, and I just think that, the Lions are going to want a sure thing at number 2, and Aiden Hutchinson certainly is, at least by all measurables, a sure thing. Obviously, nobody's ever a sure thing, but, he's had a great college career. He had a real breakout year this year at Michigan. But I am a little bit concerned considering he kind of disappeared in some big games for them. But we will see how that develops. So now on to the Texans. I've said that, the first 2 teams really need a lot. The Texans need everything, honestly, except for quarterback. Whether it's Davis Mills or whether it's Deshaun Watson, if he ever does come back and play for the Texans, although that seems, less and less likely as the days go on. I think, Davis Mills obviously played really great last year, at least at times, right? So I think you're pretty reasonably set, at least for next year at quarterback, but you need everything else. I mean, you don't really have any weapons other than Brandon Cooks. You don't really have any running backs. Your offensive line isn't very good. Your secondary is terrible. Your best defensive player in Justin Reed is leaving in free agency because for some reason you didn't want him. Your linebackers aren't all that great. You don't really have a pass rush, so they really just need everything. Honestly, they really do. I went really back and forth here on who I thought would be a great fit. It makes sense, Kyle Hamilton. It really, really does. I could definitely see the Texans taking Kyle Hamilton, especially with Justin Reed leaving, as I mentioned earlier. But here's the thing. For me, a safety at this spot is just too high. Now, granted, Kyle Hamilton's probably not going to get out of the top 5. I'd be surprised if he did, but obviously with the combine and everything like that, you never know what could happen. But at least right now, in terms of where we are, Kyle Hamilton is probably the number 2 player in the draft. He's a fantastic player. He's one of the best safeties we've seen in the last 10 or 15 years. He's probably top 2 other than, Jamal Adams for the Jets a few years ago at LSU. Kyle Hamilton's a great player, but Kayvon Thibodeau is still there. And obviously, the website says that their number one need is edge. I tend to agree. I think that, a good pass rush can really help out a lackluster secondary. You saw that in San Francisco this past year. Their secondary wasn't really anything special, but their pass rush was, and that's why their defense was so dominant. Or at least one of the main reasons why. It's not the only reason. But, for me, I went really back and forth on Kyle Hamilton and Kayvon Thibodeau here, but I am going to go Kayvon Thibodeau. I will say, I think for me, this is the spot if you are Houston to trade down. So to trade for more picks, especially considering you didn't have your first or second round pick last year. I think this is a spot where, you need more talent than just one player can give you high in the first round. So I would, maybe talk to the Eagles who have pick 15 and 16 over here. Maybe talk to the Jets who have 4 and 10. Talk to some other teams. It doesn't, I don't really know. But, a team that can give you really good value. If I was the Texans, I would trade back in the draft and take 2 really solid players, maybe even 2 or 3, and then get some picks for the future. But in this draft, we're going to keep it a little bit simple. Obviously, in future drafts, I have the trade button, so I can, do a mock draft with trades. If you guys want to see that, just let me know. But for right now, we'll keep it simple. We'll just assume that nobody's going to trade, which is obviously not how a draft works. There's going to be trades. But for right now, we're just going to do it straight, pick 1 through 32, and we're just going to do it. By the way, this is just a first-round mock draft. It's not going to be, a 7-round mock draft. That would be crazy right now. But, so I am going to go, again, if I had to pick somebody at 3, Kayvon Thibodeau is, I think, the best player in the draft, again, out of Oregon. So that is who I have the Texans taking here. Now, on to pick number 4, the New York Jets. So, again, another team that needs a lot. The Jets, had a really tough year. Zach Wilson had, he had some really good moments, but he had a lot of really bad moments as well. Played like a rookie. That's just kind of how it goes. For the Jets, obviously, actually, this is one of the few times where I think the top 4 here, I think they're actually right. I think you really need offensive tackle. You really need your pass rush to be solidified, and you just need secondary all the way around. I mean, their secondary was just so bad last year. And also, with Marcus May leaving, or possibly leaving, right? It's never guaranteed, but I believe he is hitting free agency. He's really the captain of the secondary back there. Great player, but he's probably going to be leaving. So, what do? Well, luckily for the Jets right now, the best safety in the draft is available. Kyle Hamilton, that's who I am going with. Obviously, like I said, I went back and forth as to whether Kyle Hamilton would be taken at 3, and if that was the case, then I would have just had the Jets take Thibodeau at 4, which I think the Jets would be thrilled if they got Kayvon Thibodeau at 4. And I would be sad as a Patriots fan to have to face Kayvon Thibodeau as a pass rusher twice a year. But, obviously, I think it works out well for them here. Again, I think that for a safety, top 10 is too high, but, I can't, there's a few exceptions to the rule. I mentioned Jamal Adams earlier. Guys like that are that talented. Obviously, you never know until they actually get out there, but, Kyle Hamilton is one of the best safeties we've seen in a long time. So if you're going to take a safety top 5 or top 10, then Kyle Hamilton's your guy. He had an absolutely great year last year. So really, really excited to see how he develops. I would be sad to see another great safety have to play against the Patriots twice a year, but it is what it is. Giants, they're in a very enviable position here. They have picks 5 and 7. So obviously, with the Chicago Bears being as bad as they were this year, with the trade last year, the Bears traded their first-round pick to the Giants to move up and take Justin Fields. Now the Giants have the Chicago Bears first-round pick, and I don't remember which one is which. I believe the Bears pick was 7. Yes, it does. It says traded right there. So, yes, the Bears pick was 7, and the Giants, this is their own pick, number 5. So, the Giants, another team that, needs offensive line, and you could kind of see a pattern forming. Most of these teams need edge, offensive line, and secondary. That's just how it's going to go. I do apologize for that. But they also need, they need linebacker. They need some more weapons at wide receiver. Kenny Golladay is not enough. Sterling Shepard is, getting up there in age. So, and Kadarius Toney, he didn't have a great rookie season, but I do think you need some more weapons over there. For me, I think their biggest need is quarterback because Daniel Jones is just not it. He's just not it. But I don't think that the Giants are going to take a quarterback in the first round. I'd be shocked if they did, but you never know. But I don't think that they are going to. This is a tough one for me. I think that, actually, no, it's not really a tough one. I lied. Ike Mekwano is clearly the pick here. He's probably, if you let him go, you could try and take a chance on, one of the better, one of the other edge rushers in the draft. But I think that if you let Ike Mekwano get to 6, where the Panthers are picking right now, I don't think he's going to last. I think that they would take him at 6 if he was available. So for the Giants, I think taking another really fantastic tackle out of NC State to really help solidify that offensive line that, has been pretty bad the last few years with, get Nate Solder out of there. That's what I say. Now obviously, pick 6 for the Panthers. I'd be pretty upset if I was the Panthers because now the 2 best offensive tackles are on the board. That's your biggest need. And at least right now, I wouldn't be comfortable taking any of the other tackles. I don't think that any of them are, their value is not up to snuff in terms of taking them at number 6. So this could be another opportunity for a team to trade down, should that be the case. Especially, for somebody like, let's say, again, the Eagles that have 3 first-round picks at 15, 16, and 19, wanting to trade up and get one great player, although I don't think the Eagles should do that. Again, like I said at the beginning of this, we're going to just assume that nobody's going to trade. So if I am to pick somebody for the Panthers, like I said, they need offensive tackle. They do need interior offensive line. They need linebacker. Tight end is a kind of a big need for them as well. But honestly, their defense is pretty solidified right now. They have a couple great safeties, some great linebackers, obviously some good pass rushers. Obviously, Brian Burns is fantastic. Derek Brown is a great interior run defender and also a decent pass rusher out of the nose position. So, I think that, their defense is pretty solidified right now. So they're in a pretty decent spot to really start building on offense. Obviously, you need Christian, you have Christian McCaffrey back there. If he can stay healthy, he's one of the best running backs in the NFL. You got 2 great wide receivers in DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. You definitely need to figure out quarterback, though, because I don't think Sam Darnold is the answer. So I definitely could see the Panthers taking quarterback here in real life. But again, it's kind of the similar thing that I said earlier, where, I'm not sure I would be comfortable taking one of the offensive tackles at 6. I definitely wouldn't be comfortable taking any of the quarterbacks at 6. I just don't think that their value is that great. So what I am going to do is I am going to take Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M. He's the best interior offensive lineman as far as I'm concerned, or at least the best pure guard in the draft. As far as I'm concerned, and a lot of the mock drafts are starting to show that. He's really going up in mock drafts. Sometimes he's even going top 5. I'm not sure I'd take him top 5, but, obviously I'm not too far off taking him 6. But I would, obviously you need more tackle than you do guard if you're the Panthers. But I think Kenyon Green is more of a sure pick here than any of the tackles right now. I do like, Trevor Penning. I do like Charles Cross, but I don't like them enough to take them at 6. So I'm going Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M here. Back to the Giants. So they got, obviously, Ike Mekwano here. And, now I think you've got to get that pass rush going. You've really got to solidify that. And for me, I'm going to take Trayvon Walker out of Georgia. I think that right now, He's flying up draft boards. He had a fantastic year this past year. So for me, I think Trayvon Walker is probably the most likely to go here. Now you have your pick of the litter, right? You could go David Ojabo. I think that's definitely in play. And they have Jermaine Johnson rated 9, and I think with Jermaine Johnson, I think it really depends on who you ask. I think that some people have him rated as the third best edge in the draft. Right behind Hutchinson and Thibodeau. And then some people have him rated late first round. I don't know enough about Jermaine Johnson to rate him top 10 in the draft. So right now I'm going to be leaning more towards the late first round. I think that guys like Ojabo, I think that guys like Trayvon Walker, I think that those guys are just a little bit better right now and more of a sure thing. But obviously, as time comes out and as the combine happens and everything, and I learn more about these guys, obviously that might change. You never really know. But right now, I think Trayvon Walker is where they will go with that. And another guy that I like better than Jermaine Johnson is a guy by the name of George Karlaftis, who I am going to take here at 8. Not really much to say about the Falcons here. I will say, they definitely need a lot. Wide receiver is a big issue for them right now. Obviously, you definitely need to re-solidify that offensive line. It was really bad. Matt Ryan was absolutely abused back there. I gave really no credit to the Falcons defense last year. I thought that they really weren't all that great. But obviously with the emergence of A.J. Terrell into a Pro Bowler, your secondary overperformed last year, at least to my expectations. So you don't need as much in the secondary as I would have assumed, but you still do need, safety. You probably could use some more corners as well. But for me, George Karlaftis, and the reason why I'm taking George Karlaftis and not somebody like a Jermaine Johnson or a David Ojabo at this point is I think George Karlaftis, obviously going to Purdue, they're not that great of a team. And then obviously, kind of in terms of the style of play, he's not super flashy. He's not that freak athlete that, somebody like a Thibodeau or a Hutchinson is that, flashes that like 25 sack year type talent. But George Karlaftis is just that consistent guy that's going to consistently get pressures. And there's something that I do want to say about kind of how I evaluate college pass rushers, right? So obviously when you have a lot of sacks in college, right, that's great. You have a lot of sacks. It's awesome to see somebody that has like 18, 20 sacks in a college season, although that's pretty rare. But, a guy that has, 12, 15 sacks, that's great. But I don't really look at the sack numbers necessarily. I actually look at QB pressures. So, how consistently is a guy getting after the quarterback, and how consistently is a guy beating the tackle or the guard or the center, whatever that's in front of them to get to the quarterback? That's kind of what I'm looking at, because in the NFL, those are going to translate to sacks because, obviously, it's a lot more passing in the NFL. Guys are taking more 5-step drops. Guys are going, deep middle or, post. Guys are throwing the ball deep a lot more often in the NFL than you are in college, at least most of the time, right? I can't say that for everybody, but I think that it's more important to evaluate QB pressures. That's why I really, really, and now I'm completely forgetting his name. The defensive tackle that the Patriots just picked, Christian Barmore. There it is. I don't know why I just blanked on that. I really like Christian Barmore because, he got a lot of consistent pressure. He didn't have a ton of sacks, but or a ton of tackles for loss, but as a defensive tackle, his QB pressure rate was pretty darn high, and you saw that in the NFL this year. He didn't get a ton of sacks, but he got a lot of pressure up the middle, which is almost just as effective in a lot of ways, although obviously you want to finish the play. But for me, again, bringing it back to the point here, George Karlaftis, I really think is just that consistent guy that's going to consistently get pressure. He's not super flashy. He's probably not the most athletic in the draft, but I think that the Falcons really need just some consistency, right? You could take a boom or a bust guy all you want, but he might bust. And I think George Karlaftis has the highest floor of everybody in the draft at edge other than maybe a Hutchinson. And I still think that Karlaftis' floor might be a little bit better than those guys. I think that those guys definitely have the, potential to bust. But, I'm not saying they will, but it's possible, right? And I just don't, and George Karlaftis might bust. I don't know, but I just don't foresee it. I just think that the way he plays, I think that he's technically sound in pretty much every area, and I would love it if the Falcons took a chance on him at 8 here. So, long number 8. I do apologize for that. But number 9. So we're moving on to the Denver Broncos. A lot of people thought that they should have taken Justin Fields last year. And they obviously took Pat Surtain out of Alabama, another corner. Which is crazy because I feel like they drafted corners every year for the last 5 years. But what's really crazy is that they're losing Kyle Fuller. They're losing, Bryce Callahan. They honestly don't have that much talent at the corner position anymore. Because, last year they were aging, but they still had some good players. And now this year, they're young and they're inexperienced and they don't really have as much talent as they did. So, the way this board is shaking out, Derek Stingley would be really, really tempting. But I'm going to do the smart thing. They really, really need a quarterback. And so I'm going to take Malik Willis out of Liberty here. I don't think Malik Willis is the best quarterback in the draft. I'm going to come out and say it right now. I think Kenny Pickett's the best quarterback in the draft. I think that if it was up to me, Kenny Pickett would be the number one quarterback taken in the draft. I've liked him, since the beginning of the year, since he was being projected to go, second, third round. And now obviously he's projected to go early to mid first round, sometimes late first round, depending on, how people value quarterbacks. But I think for Denver and their system and their weapons that they have this year, I honestly just think that, Malik Willis probably fits a little bit better. Teddy Bridgewater really played well for them. And Malik Willis and Teddy Bridgewater, obviously Malik Willis has a better arm. But I think they're very similar in terms of play style and in terms of what they give you. Malik Willis is definitely going to be a project. He's definitely going to be somebody that, he might not be ready day one. He might not be that guy that's going to come out and just absolutely dominate like a Patrick Mahomes was. But I think that he definitely will fit that system a little bit more. That big arm really is going to help the big play receivers that the Broncos already have. So I think Denver is going to end up with their system valuing Malik Willis a little bit better than they value Kenny Pickett, even though I personally think Kenny Pickett is a better quarterback at this time. So back to the Jets. Obviously, the Jets took Kyle Hamilton with their 4th pick here, and now they can help re-solidify that offensive line. So I am not going to go Charles Cross here. I know that he's rated at 7, but I am actually going to go Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa. I think they just need a pure tackle, right? And I think Cross obviously has played a lot of tackle, but I think he could also play guard as well. I think he might actually end up playing guard in the NFL, considering he's a little bit smaller than the other other tackles in this draft. Trevor Penning is an absolute monster. I love watching him play. He's one of those guys that, just battles all the time and just kind of has that just grit and fire. I love watching him play. It's a lot of fun. I love watching his tape. And he's a big boy. I think he's about 6'5", 370, something like that. He's a big boy. He is a wall. And if he can really put it together and, he can, kind of really establish himself and figure it out mechanically in the NFL, it's going to be really hard to get around him consistently. He reminds me, he's a little bit shorter, but he reminds me a lot of like a Trent Brown, he's 6'8", he's 370, so obviously, 3 inches taller, but similar weight. Trent Brown, I feel like he doesn't have to do anything. He's just a wall. Like, he doesn't really have to move. He just kind of, so Trevor Penning reminds me a lot of him. Obviously, they're different players, but, I think that the Jets would really do well just kind of having a wall at left tackle like Trevor Penning. So I would like him here just a little bit more than I like Charles Cross at this point. So, moving on to the Commanders. Obviously, I don't think this label here, I don't think it's been updated, but they are the Commanders now. They are no longer the football team, which I'm not sure which one's worse, but no matter. So the Commanders, right? So they need a lot, and that's been a theme. They definitely, no question, bar none, their number one need for me is going to be quarterback, and so I'm not even going to hesitate here. Kenny Pickett out of Pitt. Definitely, if he's available at 11, I think the Commanders should pounce. A lot of people want Kenny Pickett to go to Pittsburgh because obviously, Kenny Pickett went to Pitt, so that'd be a really nice thing. And obviously, the Steelers need a quarterback, but I don't think he's going to last that long. There's too many QB too many QB needy teams before 20, where the Steelers are picking. And Kenny Pickett, to me, again, best quarterback in the draft. So I just don't see him lasting all the way to 20. It could happen, I suppose, but I just don't see it happening, at least not right now. So I have Kenny Pickett going here. They need a lot more than a quarterback. They need some more weapons on offense because Scary Terry can't do it by himself. You need, again, offensive line. You need secondary. It seems like everybody needs those things, or at least most teams need those things, right? I think definitely Kenny Pickett's available. You got to go with your franchise guy. If you're going to hit the reset button on your franchise, you're going to start with a new name. You're going to have a new identity. New quarterback always works out, or at least it should. That should be your priority. You should just start all over, get a new young quarterback in there, and really go for it. Obviously, you tried that with Dwayne Haskins, and it didn't really work. So now Kenny Pickett is going to be the next guy that they try to develop into a franchise guy in this mock draft. Minnesota Vikings at number 12. I think that, it's going to be interesting because we don't really know what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins. We don't know how much longer he's going to be in Minnesota. So this is another interesting thing. I could see the Vikings trading up and taking a quarterback in this draft if the writing's on the wall that Kirk Cousins is not going to be around much longer, or if, they deem that his play is probably going to drop off. I could certainly see that. But as I said, we're not doing trades. We're not doing any of that stuff right now for the first one. So in terms of just your needs at the moment, taking, quarterback aside, you need secondary. That's the biggest problem for Minnesota. And then you need, some more speed and some more, consistency at the linebacker position. And, maybe you could use another weapon or two. Obviously, a guy like Adam Thielen is getting a little bit older. Your tight end, Irv Smith, hasn't quite developed into the Pro Bowler that you probably thought that he was going to be. He's still a decent player, but I think he just hasn't developed as much as the Vikings would like as of yet. There's definitely some things that you can improve upon, but for right now, I think that in this draft, right, so I think you're going to go corner here. You got to improve the secondary, which is crazy because I feel like the Vikings invest a lot in corners every year, but right now, I think you got to go corner, and you got a great one in Sauce Gardner right here. And yes, that is his nickname. His name here is Ahmad Gardner, but if you look at other mock drafts, Sauce, that's his nickname. So Sauce Gardner. Before today, like literally today as I'm recording this, I kind of went back and forth on, who I really thought was going to be the number one corner in the draft. Some mock drafts had Derek Stingley. Like this one, they actually have him going ahead of Ahmad Gardner, but some people had Sauce going a little bit earlier than Stingley, and Stingley did just announce today that he's not going to be participating in the combine. And I think that the injuries that he sustained at LSU towards the end of the year, he had I believe he had surgery in October. So maybe not the end of the year, but during the year, I think that's really hurt his draft stock. I think he was probably going to go top 5 before, and now obviously he's slipping a little bit. But again, I was going back and forth on who I thought the number one corner was going to be. But I think with the fact that he's not going to participate in the combine and how good I know Sauce Gardner is, I think that Stingley really solidified himself as the number 2 corner in the draft. So first corner off the board is going to be Sauce here at number 12 to Minnesota. They get a great corner. He had a fantastic year. Obviously, Cincinnati, against really all odds, made it to the college football playoff. Obviously got trounced by Alabama. But nonetheless, it was amazing that, it's a testament to him and the other guys in the secondary that they have over there. I can't remember exactly who, but I know that there's some, Kobe Bryant, like some other guys that are, pretty good from Cincinnati that played great last year. So, but I am going Sauce Gardner here at number 12 to Minnesota. Cleveland. So Cleveland, really disappointing year, obviously. I think that we all felt that they were a little more talented than what they showed last year. They don't need a ton. This is really the first team that, you kind of look at and, they don't need a lot. Quarterback is obviously, now up for grabs. A lot of people don't believe in Baker Mayfield. I personally am not one of those people. I think he's a fine quarterback. He's not worth $40 million or anything, and he needs to have realistic expectations of what he's going to earn, when he does hit free agency. But I still think he's a fine quarterback. I think that he really didn't have a lot of weapons around him. Once Odell Beckham left, I think that, having just an aging Jarvis Landry and then some, like a Donovan Peoples-Jones, like, you just need some more. You need more than that. Obviously, Austin Hooper. But, for me, I think that they needed a little bit more than that. You need linebacker, but for me, I think that you got to get more weapons around Baker Mayfield. Let Baker Mayfield prove that he's that quarterback. Let Baker Mayfield, prove that he can lead your franchise. And that 2 years ago when they made the playoffs, it was not a fluke. So for me, with the Browns, I'm actually going to take the local guy. Garrett Wilson is going to be the first wide receiver off the board out of Ohio State. Another guy might not be the best wide receiver in the draft by the time the combine rolls around, but I think all the wide receivers right now, Treylon Burks, Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, I think they're all kind of in this, like, that top five is kind of like just one giant one. Like, I think, at least for me, I might be wrong, but, when I kind of look at the draft board and I kind of look at the mock drafts and everything like that and watching those guys and watching how the mock drafts and the prospects have developed, I think that the wide receiver position is so wide open. Like, I don't really know. There's no clear-cut number one. Last year there was a clear-cut number one. Jamar Chase was the clear-cut number one wide receiver, at least to me. So, this year, who knows? Like, I don't really know who the clear-cut number one is. I could be wrong about that, but at least right now, I don't really see it. So for me, I think the story of just, Ohio State guy goes to Cleveland, Ohio, obviously, and tries to turn that franchise around after a bad year, at least tries to help there, replacing Odell Beckham Jr. And all the other guys that were there that are no longer there in terms of weapons. So, and I think with a healthy Nick Chubb and a healthy Kareem Hunt in the backfield, your offensive line getting a little bit more healthy. And then, obviously, Baker Mayfield, who played injured most of last year, really, really injured, by the way. I think that, Garrett Wilson, bringing him in is really going to help that team right now. And I can just, obviously the Browns need a lot more. They could go interior defensive line. They could certainly use help stopping the run. But I just think, I think that they would be the team to go wide receiver here. Take a chance, especially if you feel like you can compete with the Bengals. You can compete with the Ravens in the division and really, make a deep playoff run and do, I'm sure the Browns feel like they could probably do what the Bengals did this year. I mean, I'm going to be honest. So, anyways, that's what I'm doing at number 13. Baltimore at number 14, another team in the division with the Browns and with the Bengals that really underperformed this year. Obviously, Lamar Jackson getting hurt at the end of the year really, really, really just killed their season. At one point, we were talking about the Ravens, maybe winning the Super Bowl. I mean, it's crazy to think that happened, but, early on in the season, they looked like maybe the best team in the NFL. They looked unstoppable, and then all of a sudden, it's like somebody flipped a switch, and, they were really inconsistent, and then Lamar Jackson got hurt, and then it was over. They really just struggled after that. So for me, I think one thing you have to worry about now is protecting your guy, protecting Lamar Jackson. You obviously, again, need help stopping the run. But for me, there is definitely a lot of, edge players, definitely a lot of guys that, can help on the offensive line up near the top of the draft. And your interior defensive line, at least at this point in the draft, is not super great. Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis are your number one and your number two for sure, but I'm not sure if I'm the Ravens, if I feel great about taking one of those guys at 14. For me, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take Tyler Linderbaum. I don't know why I keep saying Lindenbaum every time, the first time. I know it's Linderbaum. For some reason, my stupid face wants to always say Linderbaum. I apologize for that. It's probably going to happen again at some point. Maybe even in this video. Who knows? But Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa. He played center in college, but obviously he could probably move to guard and be just fine. But I think that right now, us having a guy who's has that much experience playing center and having a guy that Lamar Jackson can get in there and trust day one. I honestly think Tyler Linderbaum could start for them day one at center right now. So I think getting a guy like that and really helping out, helping Lamar Jackson quarterback that offense, literally quarterback that offense. I think that's probably what the Ravens should kind of look for right now at this spot. Now, this is where it gets really, really cool. The Eagles have 3 of the next 5 picks. They have 15, 16, and 19, obviously with the trades that they made last year. Now, obviously, they have some pretty great picks, despite the fact that they did make the playoffs, which I know some people forget that they made the playoffs, but they still, have 3 pretty decent picks. So they kind of have the pick of the litter here if you are the Eagles. And right now, for the Eagles, you need offensive line again, and you definitely need secondary. And considering the fact that you have 3 picks in the next 5, you're in a really, really great spot to really take 3 quality players at different positions that are really going to help your team. And obviously at 15 and 16, it doesn't really matter who goes at 15 and who goes at 16, but for me right now, the most obvious choice is Derek Stingley out of LSU. Again, I think that he might be the best corner in the draft. I don't think he's going to be treated as such, but I think if we look back in 2 or 3 years, he might be the best corner in the draft if he stays healthy. So getting him at 15 here would really, really benefit that secondary for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I have him going here at 15. And then 16, another position that you really need is pass rush. They had absolutely no pass rush last year. And at this point, I'm going to go David Ojabo out of Michigan. Had a crazy year for Michigan. Really started jumping up draft boards. Midway through the season, and now obviously he's going mid-first round. I think that he is a guy that can really, really help out that pass rush. And just, again, another guy that can really make an impact day one for the Eagles. So 2 fantastic players back-to-back there. And then now for the Chargers, the Chargers have a lot of talent, man. Like, they were the team that surprised me the most when I realized that they might not make the playoffs in Week 17. And then, of course, they lost that crazy game against the Raiders that almost ended in a tie, which meant they would have both went into the playoffs. I don't know if you guys, saw that game or anything like that, but, man, that was one of the best games I've seen in quite a while. But the Chargers, they do need, a few different positions that I think they really could help. They could use some more pass rush. Obviously, Joey Bosa, he's not enough. You need some more help over there, especially with the loss of Melvin Ingram last year. You need offensive line. You certainly need interior defensive line. I honestly think that's their biggest need. They were absolutely appallingly bad against the run last year. So I think that interior defensive line is where you should go with this. So for me, I'm going to take Jordan Davis out of Georgia. Obviously, you can make the argument for Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia. 2 guys on the interior defensive line in the same college. You could definitely kind of make that argument here. But I think considering what the Chargers need, just a pure run stopper, Jordan Davis is a mammoth. 6'6", 350 pounds, just a monster. I mean, he's absolutely humongous, and he plays like a monster. There's some questions in terms of his endurance and his durability. He didn't play. I don't even think he played the majority of downs for Georgia last year, if I remember that stat correctly. But nonetheless, Jordan Davis, I think that, I don't really buy into all that. Obviously, Georgia had a lot of great talent on that defense last year, so I'm not surprised that even, that if Jordan Davis isn't, the best pass rusher in the world, he's going to be taken off on 3rd down. If it's a definite passing situation, he might not even be in the game, depending on the guys that you have behind him that are better at pass rushing. So, Jordan Davis, again, not a pass rusher, although I think he definitely could develop that part of his game. I'm not saying he can't, but right now, as just an absolute pure nose tackle, pure run stopper, a Vince Wilfork, a Derek Brown, a Vita Vea, that Jordan Davis is that guy for the Chargers, and I'm going to pick him here at 17. Saints, another team that has a pretty good amount of talent, another team that really was just bit by the injury bug. I think that if, Jameis Winston, if he stays healthy, I think that this is a team that makes a really deep playoff run, even without Mike Thomas at wide receiver. This website, they have wide receiver as your number one kind of team need, and I tend to agree with that. Even with Mike Thomas, you never really know. I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL when he plays. But him and the Saints clearly are just not on the same page with things, and so he's been injured. So it's just kind of been a strange deal here. So for me, I'm going to take, somewhat of a local guy here. And even though you need, you might even want to do quarterback if you don't trust Jameis Winston. Again, another team that needs offensive line. I think right now, considering where we are at in the draft and all the offensive linemen that have gone, you could take a chance on Charles Cross here. I'm not saying that you couldn't, but I think the fact that Treylon Burks is still here out of Arkansas, I think that, he's a guy that the Saints can't pass up here. He's just a guy that is so unbelievably versatile. He can run, he can catch, he can play inside, outside. He has absolutely blazing speed, but he's also huge. I think he's 6'3", 225, something like that. He's a big boy. He can play outside. He mostly played in the slot at Arkansas, but I definitely, with his size, I could see him developing into a very potent outside receiver. But I think the fact that he's still here at 18, I think the Saints would be crazy not to take him. I think having a weapon like him for your quarterback, offensive line, for a team like that, you can take later and develop guys. But Treylon Burks is a guy that's very unique, very, very good. Definitely could see after the combine him being the number one wide receiver in the draft for sure. He reminds me a lot of a Deebo Samuel. Obviously, you saw Deebo Samuel could catch, he could run. Treylon Burks reminds me of him a lot. Obviously, two different sizes and everything like that, and different style of play. But they remind me of each other in terms of their capabilities and their talents and everything like that. So I have him going here at 18. And I think the Eagles, honestly, they could probably use a guy like Treylon Burks. So I'm sure they would not be happy if he was not available. And honestly, if he was available, even though they need some more help at on offensive line, I think that they would probably take him at 19. But obviously, in this world, he is not available. And, for the Eagles, you definitely need more guards and center than you do tackles. But that's fine because definitely I think Charles Cross could play guard for you if you really needed him to, although he is obviously listed as a tackle, and I think that he profiles a little bit better as a tackle. But out of Mississippi State, another one of those guys, he's a little undersized by comparison to the other tackles in this draft. Evan Neal, who's absolutely gigantic. Trevor Penning, who's even bigger in terms of just like pure size. He's not taller, but he's bigger. So Charles Cross, he's 6 foot. He's 6'3" or 6'4", 310. So he's a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter, but still an all-around great player. Has great hands. Really good at stopping the run. So I think he definitely could profile as a guard in the NFL. Wouldn't be surprised if that ended up happening. But for right now, I think he will be considered a tackle. So I think that, he's fallen all the way here. And for Charles Cross, I've seen a lot of mock drafts where he goes, he's one of the guys that goes top 10 for the teams that need offensive line. And I could totally see that. Again, this is before the combine. This is before we see, the crazy athletic numbers. So I could definitely see Charles Cross going, but I just think that he's a bit of a tweener to me. So I could kind of see him being that offensive lineman that doesn't end up working out. And that's just me. I've been wrong plenty of times, and I'm sure I'll be wrong again. And I'm not saying that he can't be a good player. I'll tell you this. Greg Rousseau was that guy for me last year. Greg Rousseau was the guy that I looked at, and I was like, man, I don't know if he's going to be that guy that's really going to be great for, but you know what? The Bills took a chance on him late in the first round, and he had a pretty solid rookie year. He didn't do anything spectacular, but he did what he was drafted to do. He rushed the passer. He got a lot of pressure. So, I might be wrong about Greg Rousseau. That's totally fine. It just happens. But I think Charles Cross could, again, kind of be that tweener that ends up maybe not necessarily being great at tackle, but not being great at guard either. But I think he's still a really good player, and he's a good prospect, and he obviously could develop into something great. I'm not saying he won't. But for me, a lot of guys have Trevor Penning going this late. I prefer Trevor Penning a little bit over Charles Cross. So Cross goes at 19 to Philadelphia. Now moving on to the other side of Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh at number 20. Obviously, a lot of great players here that you can take. Dear Lord, you need offensive line. I mean, I said it in one of the first podcasts when I talked about the Steelers. Offensive line is so bad, but unfortunately, you can kind of take a look at this board. Not really any highly rated lineman for quite a while other than Zion Johnson, but I don't really know a lot about him. Spoiler, he's not going to get drafted in the first round, at least in this mock draft. So, you could take a chance on somebody like that, but, I haven't really seen him going in the first round a lot when I've kind of been, studying tape and studying, mock drafts and everything like that. I don't really see him going very, very often in the first round, although there have been some. But for me, I think your biggest need for Pittsburgh is quarterback. No bones about it. You could turn it over to Mason Rudolph, I guess, but I wouldn't, and I really wouldn't turn it over to Dwayne Haskins at this point. So I think quarterback is your biggest need here. And right now, even though Matt Corral is another one of those guys that announced he won't be going to the combine, I think I'm going to take him here. Although, I talked about Sam Howell and Carson Strong. I think they fit, but I think that they're projected to go a little bit later in the draft, second, maybe third round, probably second round. And Desmond Ritter's a great quarterback as well. But I just don't think that he would really fit where Pittsburgh is right now, especially without a great offensive line. So I think, even though Corral is not participating, I still think Corral makes the most sense here. Again, totally could see Sam Howell. Totally could see Carson Strong. I could even see Desmond Ridder if they feel like doing something a little bit different, having a little bit of a different style of play. But for me, I think Matt Corral just right now makes the most sense. A very, very good quarterback, athletic, strong, good arm, makes good decisions. So I think that Matt Corral makes the most sense here as of right now. And now for the hardest pick that I had to make in this draft. And I think the reason is because I know the most about the Patriots than I do every other team, right? And it just naturally because I'm a Patriots fan, right? So I kind of know that roster inside and out, backwards and forwards. So, this is a hard one because one thing that I haven't really talked about much other than, decision making for a couple of picks is, what am I going to, what about free agency? What happens after free agency? Well, obviously I would do post free agency mock drafts and stuff like that. But right now it's weird knowing how much the Patriots are going to possibly need after free agency. J.C. Jackson is a free agent. If he leaves, you're definitely going to need corner because you don't really have much talent at corner outside of J.C. Jackson. It's going to be Jalen Mills, Jonathan Jones, and Jawan Williams. That's not great. So, you're going to need corner. But what happens if you keep J.C. Jackson, but because of that, Hightower, Dante Hightower and Jawan Bentley have to leave in free agency. They're both free agents. So then you're going to really, really need linebacker. And then obviously, you need wide receiver. You need a big-time wide receiver because you just drafted a quarterback in the first round, and you showed last year, even with Kendrick Bourne playing as well as he did, N'Keal Harry is not the answer. Nelson Aguilar didn't really have a great year last year. He just never really got open. So, you need a guy that's going to consistently get open and, maybe even win over the top quite a bit. So, if J.C. Jackson leaves, I could see an Andrew Booth, a Trent McDuffie. If, Hightower and Jawan Bentley leave, I could see a Nakobe Dean. I could see a Devin Lloyd. If you want to go wide receiver, Jamison Williams is available. Drake London is available. Chris Olave, Jahan Dotson, you have the pick of the litter here for the Patriots. Maybe you even trade back at this point. I don't know. So it's really hard for me to kind of pick. But for me, I'm going under the assumption that J.C. Jackson is probably not going to come back. It's not looking like, the Patriots want to pay him enough money to be a number one corner, which is crazy to me because he clearly is a number one corner. But, obviously, the Patriots did spend a lot of money last year. They probably feel like, they can't really spend a lot more money now. And they're probably also trying to keep at least Bentley, maybe not Hightower, although I wouldn't be surprised if they bring him back too, even though he's getting older. But for me, I think that they need corner, and I'm actually not going to take Booth, and I'm not going to take McDuffie, even though they are rated higher here. There's a guy I want you guys to really watch out for. Roger McCreary out of Auburn. That's who I'm going to go with at number 21. He's a Patriots pick to me. He really is a Patriots pick to me. And the reason is because he had a fantastic year at Auburn. And I don't think anybody cares, which is really sad. I've seen him go in the third round in mock drafts, which is bonkers to me. Because to me, he shows on tape the ability to be a shutdown number one corner. So, kind of how I describe it is, I think I said this in the last in the last video where I talked about, where I rebuilt the Giants. Hopefully you guys like that. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But I talked about your number one corner is that guy that you don't really want to throw to. As an opposing quarterback, you're not going to throw at the number one guy, so you're going to throw at the number two guy all the time. And Roger McCreary just showed that he can absolutely lock somebody down. I mean, the quarterbacks didn't throw at him very often at Auburn. And there's a reason. It's because he was really good at shutting down your best wide receiver. And that's exactly what you need out of a guy who's going to be your number one corner. He's probably the best pure man corner in the draft. His zone can use a little bit of work, but the Patriots do a lot of pretty complicated man coverages, and they do a lot of complicated zone coverages as well. But I think that in terms of the Patriots, I really feel like that he can fit that system and be that next number one corner for them. And so for me, I think he fits the team better than Booth, better than McDuffie, even though those are two fantastic players. I think Roger McCreary is the best fit for the Patriots right now if you are going to go corner. And the best part about it is if he's not being evaluated as high, you could probably trade back and still get him, which is absolutely fantastic if you are the Patriots. But I am going to go Roger McCreary here out of Auburn. 22, obviously the Raiders, a disappointing end of the season, but obviously, they had a decent year last year, made the playoffs. I'm not sure how many of us expected them to make the playoffs, especially after John Gruden, all that stuff happened. So, they need a lot of stuff going, they need a lot of stuff here. Obviously, you can see over here. I kind of have that, in a different order, but those are pretty much the four things that I evaluated that they need looking at their roster. And you have some great, interior offensive linemen available. And you obviously have Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia. I think that'd be the obvious pick. But this is the Raiders. And they don't like drafting the obvious pick. So for me, I'm going to go crazy a little bit here. And I'm going to take Jameson Williams out of Alabama. And I know. He is injured right now. And he probably, he might not even play most or all of the first season in the NFL because he's recovering from a torn ACL. However, Raiders, they have a history of drafting the not obvious guy, and they have a history of drafting wide receivers, running backs that are just blazingly fast. Jameson Williams, before injury, absolutely the fastest wide receiver in the draft. So I could definitely see if he is still available at 22, the Raiders just pouncing on him. And, even if he does miss his first year, I could definitely see them wanting to take a chance on Jameson Williams and taking him at number 22. It just makes sense to me, given that it's the Raiders. Obviously, they might go Jermaine Johnson. They might go Devontae Wyatt here. They might even try and get one of these two corners that are still available here. Maybe even improve at linebacker. But for me, right now, I think it's a little bit more fun to say that they're going to go Jameson Williams just because it feels like a Raiders pick. I mean, you guys can disagree. Feel free. But for me, it just feels like the Raiders pick to go with Jameson Williams here. That obviously leaves the Cardinals in a great spot. The number one need that they had last year and still going into this year is corner. I think that they have a great chance to really solidify it. You got some great veterans that are going to be hitting free agency in the secondary this year. And now I think you can double up here and draft a corner, and I'm going to go Andrew Booth out of Clemson. So, Andrew Booth, a guy that I'm really a fan of. He's very, very athletic. He can jump out of the gym. But he just didn't have that great a year at Clemson. And quite honestly, neither did Clemson, right? Obviously, Clemson had a pretty bad year. And with that, Andrew Booth also had a bad year. So I think that he has kind of fallen down the draft boards as the year has gone on. Guys like Trent McDuffie, guys like Roger McCreary even, guys like Ahmad Gardner, they may not have been rated ahead of him at the beginning of the year. I would have put Andrew Booth as the number 2 corner in the draft, probably before the college football season started. But now, obviously, he might be the 4th or 5th best, according to this. So, Booth falling to 23, I think could really be a coup for Arizona. What? Arizona? Bleh, excuse me. And I think that they're getting a great player. And if they can double up and really bring in a veteran like a Bryce Callahan or a Kyle Fuller or a Richard Sherman or somebody like that to really help solidify that back end of the secondary, I think that really, really spell good things for Arizona here. Great pick for them, or at least in my opinion. Now, another team that's in a pretty good spot here to take kind of whatever you want. The Dallas Cowboys, there's some great players that have fallen in the draft here, at least in this mock draft. And like I said, this is just, this is just my opinion, right? I could some of the guys that are available, I could definitely see going a lot earlier than they are. But, this is just kind of how it's shaken up so far, and things will change as time goes on. But for the Cowboys, I mean, they are in an absolutely fantastic spot. They are in a very enviable spot because they can take, they need interior defensive line. You've got Devontae Wyatt. You need edge. You got Jermaine Johnson. You need linebacker. Nakobe Dean and Devin Lloyd are available. You want another wide receiver in case Michael Gallup leaves. Drake London is available here. Chris Olave is available here. Jahan Watson. I cannot say his name today for some reason. Jahan Dotson is available here. Even somebody like a DeMarvin Leal is available. So, you're pick of the litter here. And for me, I'm going to go Jermaine Johnson. I think he's fallen far enough. I don't think he's going to get past Dallas if he's available. They need some more pass rushers. You got an amazing pass rusher in Micah Parsons, but Randy Gregory didn't have a great year last year. You need some more guys that can rush the passer. Need some more guys that can help stop the run. Jermaine Johnson is that guy for Dallas. The Bills. This puts them in a great spot, too, because they really need to solidify that defensive line as well. You saw it against the Chiefs. Chiefs didn't have that great of an offensive line last year, or at least, on paper they did, but they didn't perform up to snuff, or at least what we probably all thought would happen in terms of that. But, for right now, you need edge, you need interior defensive line, and I've got a guy that can do both. Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia. He is not going anywhere past this. He's a fantastic player. I definitely could see him going way earlier in the draft for sure. Most of these guys that are about to get drafted, I'm going to say I could definitely see them going earlier, depending on how the combine rolls around. But Devontae Wyatt, another guy that, wasn't really on the radar, at least not on mine, for most of the year. But then, once the season was over and Georgia ended up winning the Natty, it was kind of obvious, like, man, they had a lot of talent on defense and a lot of really great talent that can go in the first and second round. Just in this, let's count them up, guys. So you've got, Trayvon Walker, that's 1. You've got Jordan Davis, that's 2. Devontae Wyatt, that's 3. And you still got Nakobe Dean over here at 4. That could be 4. You got Lewis Seen, that, he might go a little bit higher. So right now, you've got at least 4 guys that, could possibly be first-round picks and are pretty likely to be first-round picks as far as I'm concerned. So, obviously Devontae Wyatt, good player, had a great year. So I have him going to the Bills at 25. Titans, you need linebacker, whether Rashad Evans comes back or not. I think that's pretty obvious. So for me, Nakobe Dean out of Georgia. So back-to-back Georgia guys here at 25 and 26. I definitely could see this being, Devin Lloyd out of Utah. He's a little bit more of an athlete, a little bit quicker. But I think Nakobe Dean's just solid. And obviously, he's fast, he's athletic, he's a great playmaker as well. Not to say that he's not, just to make that clear. But I think Nakobe Dean fits that scheme a little bit more. It reminds me a lot of Rashad Evans, actually, to be honest. So I think that he'll go at 26 here in this draft. The Bucs, I think that for me, obviously Ali Marpet, the Pro Bowl guard, just announced his retirement at 28, which is really sad because he really was, I think he was the key to that offensive line. Nobody really noticed it, but I think he was really the key to that offensive line. So now, your tackles are pretty solidified, but now your guards really, really need some help. That could be an option here. Although I think that you have some guys, later in the draft in terms of tackle. Obviously, like a Daniel Falele, even like an Abraham Lucas out of Washington State. And then on the interior, Zion Johnson's obviously still around. I think that he's probably going to slip to the second round. Tyler Smith out of Tulsa. Jamari Salyer, I said Saylor, that's not right. Jamari Salyer out of Georgia, another great Georgia player that I could see honestly going pretty high in this draft. So I think that you have some options later for offensive line because, offensive line is very important. And if you can get the top end guys in the draft, then I think you're going to be in pretty good shape. But obviously, offensive line is somebody that you can draft in the 4th or 5th round and you can develop. And they might be just as good as somebody that you draft in the 1st round. You never really know. But Obviously, a guy like Trent McDuffie, who's fallen all the way to 27 here, I think that you just cannot let him go if he is still available. Best, again, this is, it's not the biggest need for Tampa. They do need some more help in the secondary for sure, but I think that, this is just a best player available situation where, your plans kind of go out the window. If Trent McDuffie falls, I think Tampa would be smart to take him here at 27. And this is another guy, Trent McDuffie, that, he's in the conversation for, top 3 corners in the draft. Some people think it's going to go, Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, and then right behind him, Trent McDuffie. I've seen mock drafts where Trent McDuffie's going top 10. So, definitely he's one of those guys that can go a lot earlier, pretty much along with a lot of these guys. So, now for the Green Bay Packers, this is another weird one. I don't think you need a lot. You need to really help that, pass rush. Rashawn Gary really developed last year. He's gotten better every year. Zadarius Smith was a big disappointment last year, but I think, if he's healthy and he comes back, I think he can still help that pass rush. So it might not be, they say they have it as the number 1 need here. I think it's probably going to be more like 3 or 4 on the need, especially if Aaron Rodgers ends up leaving. I don't think Jordan Love's the answer. So, offensive line, and I also think wide receiver. I watched that game, and Alan Lazard, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they're just not the answer, man. They're decent players, but they're just not the answer. And so I think Chris Olave out of Ohio State, I think he's the guy that fits here. I definitely could see Drake London at this spot. I think that, having a jump ball receiver for Green Bay would make a lot of sense. But I think that he gives a bit of a different kind of more slot type, just kind of quick, get open kind of skill set for the Packers that they really need. I think that he's just a guy that would get open more often than a Drake London. Not to say that Drake London couldn't get open more often, but Drake London's more of a big body wide receiver. He's more of a Mike Evans that's going to go up and get jump balls, which, that is great. That skill set is definitely needed, and I can certainly see the Green Bay Packers wanting to go with them here. Would have no issue with that whatsoever, taking Drake London over Chris Olave. But for me, Chris Olave, I think the Packers really just need a guy that's going to get open consistently that's not named Devontae Adams. So Chris Olave, I think, makes the most sense. And now for the Dolphins, what's crazy is now you have the opportunity to take Drake London, who is the polar opposite of every wide receiver on your roster. Jalen Waddle is your guy that I just talked about that's just going to get open all the time. He's also, unbelievably fast and can get open deep. And Drake London is just that guy that's going to go up and get jump balls for you. He can play outside. He can probably play a little bit inside, but I think mostly he'd be outside. Jalen Waddle can work out of the slot. And if Devontae Parker's still there, then obviously you still have him. So, I think honestly, Drake London is a great pick for them at 29 if they can get him. I'm not sure he'll be available in real life by the time that this pick rolls around, but right here, Drake London at 29 I think is a great pick for the Dolphins, especially this late in the first round. The Chiefs, I think they need, it's crazy to think that they need more weapons, which is just wild to me, but, Tyreek Hill can't do it by himself. Travis Kelce can't do it by himself. And I felt like the other weapons really didn't step up. Mecole Hardman didn't really do much. Pyron Pringle didn't really step up. So I think that, a weapon could make sense here. Obviously you got a guy like Jahan Dotson, who if you add that to that kind of speed to the Chiefs, good luck. Good luck covering anybody there. But I think for me right now, they just have a linebacker problem. They don't really have a lot of great linebackers over there in Kansas City. They've improved a little bit over the last 2 years, but I think the fact that Devin Lloyd is available right now at 30, I think that's where they need to go. He is he can fly. He is one of the best athletes in the draft at any position, really. And, I'm not going to lie to you. I would not be surprised if Devin Lloyd goes top 10. By the time the combine rolls around and all of his numbers come in, his 40 time is probably going to be crazy. His jumping ability, his quickness. I could see him being a guy that, is projected to go mid to late first round like he is here. And then by the time the draft rolls around, he's going at number 7. He's going at number 10. I could definitely see that happening. But for right now, I really didn't see a place for him up, in terms of, he goes at number 21 to the Patriots. In this, I just think that there are other needs for other teams right now that make more sense in this period of time. So Devin Lloyd, man, if the Chiefs could get him at 30, that'd be such a great pickup for them because he can cover tight end, he can stop the run, he can absolutely fly. I think he can honestly probably keep up with a lot of the running backs in the NFL right now. So, he's just a guy that again can fly. He's a great athlete. So I would love to see what that kind of weapon would look like on the Chiefs defense. He would really match their offense in terms of just that kind of blazing speed. Bengals at 31. So I think I'm actually going to go wide receiver here. No, I'm kidding. No, obviously you don't need wide receiver if you're the Bengals. You need offensive line. Zion Johnson's available, and I think that it makes sense here, but I'm actually going to take a little bit of a risk here. I'm going to take Bernard Raymond out of Central Michigan. Obviously here he's projected to go 52. I don't think that's going to stay like that. I think that he's going to end up going mid to late first round. He's a guy that he's just a freak athlete, right? And he's got a great story. He came over from Austria a few years ago, I believe in 2017, to play college football. He started playing football when he was 14, so, he hasn't been playing his whole life. And up until his junior year of college, he was a receiver and a tight end. So, his junior year of college, Central Michigan said, hey, put on some size. We're going to play you at tackle. So he's only been playing tackle for 2 years. And he's already, for a guy who's been playing tackle for 2 years, he's already really technically sound. He's not perfect, but, he's only been doing it for 2 years, so he's not going to be. But for a guy that's only been doing it for a little bit, he's really, really sound, and he's big, he's strong, he's got all the tools. So if he could harness all of that, I think that, when he goes to the combine, I think he's going to be one of those offensive linemen that flash. Like, I think that he's going to be that guy that pops the radar gun, that, makes general managers sit and go, who the heck is this guy? And I think eventually he's going to sneak into the first round. And if the Bengals can get him and he develops the way I think he can, I think it's going to be a real steal for the Bengals. And obviously, you just need anybody to play offensive line for the Bengals. And back at number 32 here, and we're back, pretty much where we started. Obviously not the number 1 pick, but the Lions had the number 2 pick. We're back here at number 32. Took Aiden Hutchinson with the number 2 pick, obviously. So, you took care of your biggest need. Maybe not took care of it, but you really helped out your biggest need, right, with your pass rush. And I could definitely see them going in a lot of different directions here. You probably need a quarterback here. You probably need another weapon. Somebody like a Jaquan Brisker out of Penn State at safety could make sense for them as well. But I think right now, Jahan Dotson out of Penn State, I think that you just need some more weapons in that offense. So that's going to be it. And I'm just going to scroll down so that you can see Jahan Dotson here. So, he's a guy that he can move. I mean, he is one of the fastest players in the draft. So I think that the Lions, here's my thing. I could see the Lions taking Desmond Ridder, the quarterback, out of Oklahoma. Yeah. Sorry, I blanked for a minute there. But, I could see them taking Desmond Ridder for sure. But for me, I think that it makes more sense to take Jahan Dotson here because, the Lions had this second pick, obviously, in the first round, and that was their own pick. And they have their own second round pick, which means they have the 34th pick as well. So they pick a 32 here, and they pick a 34. And the only team that's in between them, I know you can't see it here, but just pretend, is the Jaguars. And obviously the Jaguars, they don't need a quarterback. They have Trevor Lawrence, who they took at number 1 overall last year. So there is a 0.00001% chance, because I guess you never say never, but, it's pretty impossible that the Jaguars are going to take a quarterback here at pick number, what would end up being 33. Now, there is a much better chance that a number 1 caliber wide receiver that's still on the board goes at number 33 to the Jaguars. So I think the Lions would take Jahan Dotson here, and if they wanted to go Desmond Ridder for, to get another quarterback in there at 34, you could certainly do that. He's still in play. But for right now, Jahan Dotson is where I'm going to go with that. So, yeah, that's it. That's the first mock draft. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly did. A lot of research went into this. Obviously, I'm going to get better at kind of learning all the strengths and weaknesses of all the other guys in the draft. I kind of, once the season is over, that's when I kind of really hone in on that kind of stuff. So, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you guys want me to do this kind of stuff more often, like I said, doing NBA mock drafts, doing some more NFL mock drafts, if you want to see me do a mock draft with trades where I think, guys can trade, I can certainly, entertain that idea. There obviously have to be some rules, but, I could certainly do that. But as of right now, that is going to be it for the video, and that's going to be it for this week. Honestly, I could talk about the Celtics, I guess, but, they're the same team that they were a few days ago. They're still pretty good. So, there's not really much going on with that. Obviously, we talked about the lockout a little bit earlier, but for me, really just, this is it. I figured I'd do something a little bit different this week, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And thank you guys so much for watching. Tune in next week. By the way, if you stuck around all the way to the end of this video, I'll let you guys know next week is going to be a very special week of the Lopes Goes Last podcast. So please make sure you tune in for that. I'm going to have so much fun. I'm not going to tell you what it is. Not yet, anyway. You're just going to have to wait for that. But I'm very excited about it. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Hey guys, me again. I just want to say thank you so much for checking out the Lopes Goes Last podcast. It means the world to me that you decided to stick all the way to the end. That's super cool. So thank you again. And if you really, really like what you see, I'd love for you to subscribe, like the video, and share it with all your family and friends because, this is my passion project. This is what I love to do, and I really want the sucker to grow. And the only way that that can happen is through you guys, is if you guys can help me out. So again, if you like what you saw, please subscribe, like the video, share with all your friends and family. That's the only way this is going to grow. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.